And we were going to have a Starbucks representative come and give this pitch, but the Starbucks guy got busy, so we're going to have Russ.
False advertising.
Yeah.
Wait,
Still got the
wait a
beer,
minute.
right?
I didn't say you're not going to get what you came for. More than that, some.
Typical Russ.
Russ tells me he knows more about the app than that guy did anyway.
I didn't say that.
So Russ is going to talk to us. So Russ, all yours.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. We are going to talk about Starbucks, and the reason they didn't come is they sell alcohol here, not coffee, so it really wasn't good. No, there's some logistical issues, but they're a highly esteemed client, and we're going to focus on them around a certain context. And the context is going to be the 5 rules of modern applications. So this is something you'll probably hear more and more of. Last year, there was the Nexus of Forces. That was a big thing where you have mobile, social, data, and cloud. This is kind of the next generation of that a little bit. So it's just one of those concepts to keep in mind when you're out there talking to people strategically about these technologies. Because when we say workflow or we say mobile, those mean different things to different people, especially when you're talking about consumer versus a business. And everybody's been very, very intimately familiarized with consumer-based mobile apps. However, we're not using mobile applications in our day-to-day business very often. I would say the way that we're using it is we can get email on our phone. And we did that way back in the days of BlackBerry. And I say way back in the days of BlackBerry because most of you are probably not going to be using BlackBerry in the next couple of years. It's probably not in your corporate future. But it was important and it was great when it was there. However, things are changing. So what we're going to talk about first is rule number 1. And the other thing I want to emphasize as we're going through this, and thanks to Starbucks, I've got a couple of gift certificates. So for people that participate and go over and above participation or add value, we've got a couple of those to give away. I want this to be interactive. That's what it's really all about. Sharing with our various experiences. But the first rule, and what we're seeing in the market, is desktop is going to equal mobile. Okay, so most organizations today, when you're designing your applications, when you're implementing your ERP, your CRM, you're thinking desktop. You have whole UI teams that are dedicated to those types of things. And then this mobile thing came along. And it was kind of, well, that's nice to have. We should get mobile. We should have a mobile app, even though it adds no value, really. What we're seeing a tremendous shift in right now is how are we going to have the same information available and the same value through mobile or the desktop. They're interchangeable. And a data point there, Forbes just released this like a month ago. By the end of this year, 2014, one out of every 4 implementations across the organization will be desktop. The other 4 will be mobile. Mobile superseding everything that you're seeing organizations doing out there. So it's not just a consumer-based thing. It's organizations are going, we need to mobile enable our employees. It's not a trend anymore. And I think one of the biggest aspects to this is that it needs to be the same look and feel. So when we were working with Starbucks, and they were going, right now we have all these people that are out in the field with paper-based forms and with laptops and spreadsheets. We wanted to have a consistent user experience. So they might have their iPad, their iPhone, or their laptop, whatever is their preference. They want the same user experience. So can you guys design something to facilitate that? And that's exactly what we took to market, and exactly what people expect. So what you're talking about there are some various dynamics that you have to consider. Along with the consistent user experience is how do you make things look the same? I mean, a browser is one way of doing it, right? And we can present things in a browser and it'll look the same, especially if you use HTML5. And I know in this group we've talked about HTML5 and mobile in the past. That's not good enough on a mobile device. On a mobile device, we can't blow up the screen and see everything like we want to. We want to be able to leverage the inherent capabilities of those mobile devices, whether it's swiping on an iPhone or various gestures that we're going to be doing on an Android. Those are things we're used to doing. We want to be able to use those in that experience. So having that consistent experience of the information across those different form factors that you might see. So if it's an iPad, it's going to be different than an iPhone, for example. So those are some of the challenges that go into play there. But the bottom line is trying to deliver a consistent experience about this. Does anybody else have any thoughts around that you've experienced either in some of the deployments you've done or you've been challenged with as an organization? Okay. biggest thing that I can add here is interactive data.
I would build on that and say relative data as well. So if you're in the field, it might be things like, give me information on a landing page that talks about upcoming weather, if I'm doing construction, for example.
Yep.
Where I am.
Or where, yeah, or GPS, yeah, GPS activity.
Yep.
Or route my course, what I have to do for the day.
Absolutely. You're hitting those spot on. Yep. Those are absolutely important aspects, and we'll get into some of those as well. But those are going to make you more productive as well, right? And they're going to take advantage of the mobile device that you have, the mobile aspect, where your laptop really wasn't doing that in the past. Okay, good. So at Starbucks, we started with Starbucks about 3 years ago. Starbucks is a very innovative, progressive company. It's incredible how many Starbucks they can squeeze into a specific area. Right here, I just did a little search before I came here. There's 10 within less than a quarter of a mile. I mean, they're everywhere. So, but the interesting thing about Starbucks is Starbucks' primary corporate objective is they want it to be a destination. You're going to Starbucks to hang out. Whether you're visiting from out of town or whether you're local, you get a consistent user experience. That's what you expect. And that's what they try to sell globally. It's a global brand. They're in 67 countries, 17,000 stores. So Starbucks, before they implemented the Appian solution, their goal was, if we're going to keep this brand, it has to be consistent. So they hired a lot of field people to go out, and their whole job was to fill out surveys when they go into a store, inspect it. What do the outlets look like? How does the awnings look? What are the infrastructure things that we have that we put in place that are here? It could come down to as simple as the cups, the amount of cups they have, the efficiencies that they're seeing. It's a tremendous amount. It's a rather large checklist. And it oftentimes took hours to fill out within a store, often paper-based. Often these forms came from different groups. Everybody has their own rationale and why they want to collect information. Well, they've got this captive audience on the ground. So that was a challenge. And these guys would drive around, which they still do. It's important to have a physical presence there. But, they use whatever tools they could, GPS, TomTom, whatever it might be. There was no integration between their actual work and where they needed to be. Then they'd get to the store and do their work and eventually get back to a hotel room, who knows when, road warriors, and enter this information into spreadsheets. Lots of different convoluted spreadsheets. Some were in Lotus Notes databases. Some were updated to procurement systems that actually started into fulfillment. I might have a bad outlet that might now trigger another process later on down the line where we need to replace that. But right now, the initial, the old process was, I just need to know where I'm at. What is the current state? They weren't even thinking about how can we, make more efficiencies in the future state. So a lot of challenges were there. And yeah.
Why is there a pizza on the car?
A pizza.
I don't want. Yeah, above the car.
Oh.
It's like,
That's a compass.
okay.
It's really a good thing I draw these out prior. It would definitely look more like a pizza or a UFO. But so, when they started looking at this problem, what do you think were their top 3 issues? Because this is their brand, this is their destination. What were their top 3 issues? Do you think it was cost, time? What do you think the top 3 were?
Probably just transmitting that paper back into the center office would be the biggest issue.
That was definitely an operational one. Yes. Yes.
User error.
Consistency. Yep. Those are very good. Any more?
Time to market.
Yeah, timeliness of the data.
Time again. Yeah. But how did that impact everything at the end of it?
Well, collating it
Getting the
had
work
to be
orders?
awful.
But if you're looking at this and you're the president of the company, going, wait a minute, I want to get a new, something new out to every place, or I don't see the results that I want to get. This process took 8 weeks, by the way. 8 weeks. Can you imagine that? Managing that? That's your brand. That was their biggest thing. We don't have a consistent brand. It's exactly. That was the #1 driver on investment. Was visibility, brand. Now, what came second, all the other things you guys discussed. Time. Time was money, too. That's just impossible. Imagine if they wanted to roll out something new. 6 weeks just to assess who's got what. In one particular store. 17,000. You can't control that. You can't have a consistent brand. They needed to significantly reduce that. And at the same time, they wanted to reduce the cost. But it wasn't the cost of putting, they have about 300 people out there to cover all these stores. So that wasn't their biggest cost. It was that time. You know, that latency of when I realize I have an issue to when I actually acknowledge it at a corporate level. And then I have to actually go out and resolve it. So what they wanted to do is build something in to more effectively, to find that out in hours, what their issues were, to have it consistent, be able to share knowledge across the enterprise, and then be able to start a fulfillment process. So if I needed to get something fixed at one of those sites, I know electrical outlet, I already know who the contractor is, I know who the procurement people are, whatever it needs to be. I've got that in process to get that rectified as soon as possible. So that was their objective, and that's exactly what they did with Appian. So we designed, the actual business rules. There was a lot of things that could be designed that were consistent across various stores and locations and those types of things. And it was based on role and geography, and they flowed up from a security standpoint, from an approval standpoint, from a notification standpoint. Now people that might be in a specific region are almost notified. The inspector was here, they said this instantly. They already know, and it might be on their own mobile device. They go, God, we're getting a new outlet put in over here, or we've got some real issues we need to work with. So that's really made the whole organization much more proactive, and this knowledge base, when they're entering this information in, goes straight into the supply chain, but they're also coming up with new ideas, because they're collaborating on these types of things, going, you know what? This thing worked out really well when we took this particular approach over here, and we saved a lot of money, and it was easier to do. They can share that instantly across all these people. There's not a process, it's not a formal process that has to be designed. It's just out there using some of the social aspects of what we're talking about. And when we say social, because that's not one of the things we're talking about here. We've heard so much about it over the last few years. We will talk about that. There's a place for social. And it's not Facebook. There's a place for Facebook, too. But social for work's sake. They actually make things actionable. But now that process is reduced to 3 hours. So 8 weeks, 3 hours, plus all back-end processes to get out of it. There's a number of them that still take some time. Takes some time to buy some things. Sometimes we're negotiating those types of things. But they've seen significant improvements. And the bottom line, they have a much more consistent brand than probably anybody else on the planet. They don't even need to say anything. They just got a logo. Any questions on that?
Yeah, the data mining, so you said what was number one. What did they find out that they weren't expecting through this exercise?
I think that well, there's a number of things that they found out that they weren't expecting. I think they're still uncovering some of those things. But the biggest thing that they found out is the ability for people to actually figure things out in the field. That there was a tremendous amount of differences culturally between the different geographic locations that they needed to accommodate. You have this mentality as a franchise. Everything's got to come out of corporate. It's got to be done through corporate. And that works for a lot of, it has historically. It's almost the only way you can maintain consistency. But what they've realized, you can even go to the different Starbucks here. You go to the Galleria, it's a different experience than when you go to somewhere in New Prairie. But you got to maintain it based on the geography a little bit and to collaborate with some of those things. So being able to have that democratization of information from the bottom up is something I think they realize the most valuable.
Well, I could see that would be best practice sharing too. So what's working well in one part of the country that we could maybe duplicate or reproduce other places to overall improve our brand.
Right. Right. Yep. Yep.
So do most of those franchises have a similar store inspection process? Or
They all do.
They all do?
Yes. And they actually started out mandating the inspectors had iPads. But the inspectors are just one person within the process, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. They're the heads down workers. But there's all these other ancillary people, from people that are just out there in the store that might need to be involved in the process at the appropriate time, to executives that have much more visibility now.
So what is your question? Does
My
McDonald's,
question is, does every single, Caribou, McDonald's, Burger King, do they all have a similar type of?
No, no one does.
we have a customer that in California that runs a bunch of Wiener schnitzels, and they're using mobile.
Yeah. We're pursuing multi-store location things at a number of retailers. So we're seeing more of a, I think, demand for that type of thing. But people have tried to typically carve this out with a lot of different tools. And not every organization feels as strongly about this brand visibility as Starbucks did. So we're hoping that we'll continue to see more success there. We are. Yeah, when they did their ROI, it was a reduction in time.
Time.
Yeah, yeah. They knew they could save significantly there. And that, I mean, the ROI is off the charts on something like this. They're not even going to share that with us. We charge too much for the software the next time they re-up.
So, but basically though, maybe this is an interesting point, they justified it based on soft costs.
That's what was the strategic driver, yes.
Yep.
Yep. And we are seeing more of that now. You know, that's another shift I've seen in the market from a general sense is that, you know, especially in content management, there was everything was operational for many, many years and still is. It's going to get things, you know, then it became more governance, compliance. We're driving a lot of things. I'm avoiding in jail or litigation and those types of things. But it's back now to customer experience. A lot of these things align with that customer experience. If you provide a customer with superior experience, you surprise them, it all is going to pay dividends. It's a holistic type of thing. However, nothing's going to get off the ground unless you got that hard dollar at least covered. You know, and these guys more than quantify that.
Do you think they're following the mobile phone, like the Verizon and Sprint customer experience with this development? Do you think they're coming from that?
No,
No, I don't know.
no. And so what's your context to that?
I'm just wondering because a lot of the mobile phone places have they have like the intranet and a lot of content
Right.
management that they push out.
Right.
So,
No, I mean, I think that technology is neat for them. Their innovation is more important than the technology.
okay.
I think that's really
That's what I was-
separating those two. Yep. Because that innovation, most of the innovation they're getting, technology is helping, but it's coming from the knowledge people have and they're being able to share it. So number two, and this is important for most of our clients today, and one of the things we're seeing, it was important for Starbucks to get up and running, as well as Enterprise Rent-A-Car, which literally built an entire business, is cloud is the equivalent of on-premise. Another big thing you'll see this year. We've already talked about in this group, what is cloud? What does it mean to me? What's appropriate in cloud? We feel, and there's a lot of thought leadership in here, there should be no difference. So as an organization, I should be able to say, hey, I want to use an application like Appian, and if I want this part in the cloud, I'll put it in the cloud. If I want this part on-premise, I want this on-premise. I don't want the cost to be different. I might want to, as Enterprise did, they own National, but they built this entire application for Enterprise Ride-Share from the ground, kind of using our application, saying we don't want to be able to bring in the old iron, we want to have it mobile enabled, we want to be able to know where people are so they can be picked up by the contracts we have and that type of thing. We want to be able to bill it automatically. They built it all up in the cloud. And their original plan was to bring it all on-premise like they do with a lot of their applications. They decided there's only certain information that we didn't feel comfortable with in the cloud. They left the rest of it up in the cloud and just brought some of it on-premise. But they're interchanging it. There are people that are working in the cloud and then bringing it down on-premise. We feel that's another big trend that you're going to start to see in the next year.
Does the user ever know the difference?
No, absolutely not. Where the user might know the difference sometimes when you have it on-premise and you do new releases and you have to support those, the team has to put those in. When you do those in the cloud, it's automatic. You know, you're on your iPhone, you have no idea. There's nothing, you don't need to update a new version or something. Sometimes you do. You'll be able to say, hey, you need to update your version of the application. You have a question, Matt?
Yeah, I don't, my question is, you know, for Starbucks, was this really kind of a forms processing workflow, or do you have a forms piece with yours, or what?
Yes.
Yes, that's all the above.
Well, forms processing was definitely a big part of it, right? What is the context that I have to put this information to initially gather, or how am I gathering it today? So replacing those components absolutely is, and we have that inherent in our solutions. Most BPM solutions have a form component or work with one, absolutely. But the challenge sometimes is taking that form solution and making it so that it's mobile enabled, right? Or the same if it's going to be, whether I'm working on, I literally have clients that work in their desk, on their desktop, filling out whatever they might be, and they get pulled away and work somewhere else, and then go out in the field and pick that right back up where they're on their mobile device. That was a challenge for a lot of clients. It was important to have that seamlessness. So the other thing, so you're going to see a lot about hybrid clouds coming up more and more, and there's all different types of clouds, but we're just seeing such a tremendous uptick in it, and we work, 30% of our clients are in federal government. And you can imagine their initial adversity to the cloud, but it's not been an issue. And a lot of it has to come down with making sure people are going to be protected. You're sometimes more protected in the cloud because of the services that are there. You know, Google, Amazon, Microsoft all have really huge investments. That's their whole direction, in ensuring people are safe with their information in the cloud. And one of the things you'll probably find about Target, and I'm speculating, but that information wasn't stolen from every point of sale system. It's not like these guys went to every location in Target in the world and had it on there. It was probably stole from somewhere internally, from a non-production system that had all that information that they were testing and doing development with. So if that would have been in the cloud, it probably would not have been possible. So I'm very excited about the cloud. I compare the cloud a lot of times to the way that manufacturing companies, even 3M, years and years ago, had their own, created their own electricity. Everybody did. That's what we did. Like you have your own IT. You wouldn't even think about that now. There might be applications for that, areas where you want to do that. But the cloud's going to facilitate a lot more for us to get more rapid return and time on our investment. And that's one of the things we see the most is that people go, I could literally start developing this tomorrow, be implementing, I'm not purchasing any hardware, and I'm ready to go. So Starbucks, the other point I didn't make on the last slide, when we started that project for all those inspectors, from the kickoff date, we went live, GA, with it on their mobile devices in 6 weeks. They asked a lot, but we did it. You don't see that with typical BPM applications or even any type of enterprise application. A lot of that's due to the cloud. You're not having to procure all that infrastructure, provision everything. It can be spun up really quickly. And it can be, you can add the scalability if you need really quickly. The other thing we're seeing in the cloud are what we call web services and smart services. These are important attributes because every system that you're going to be implementing in the cloud is typically going to require you to go information to other places. So within Starbucks system, we're accessing information from their ERP system, from their CRM system, from other types of systems that are just keeping contracts available and those types of things. It's there, it's still presented up in a single consistent user interface, but we're not customizing integration points to that. We're creating these one-time smart services for that particular interface. And we've done a lot of those for standard applications, like the SAPs and Salesforce.com, but a lot of times they're for customized things that you might have, but you create it one time, and then it almost acts like an app, you plug it in. So you're still using the base code software. That's another kind of new modern application concept. So I'm not customizing my app. So when I upgrade to a new version of Appian or whatever it might be, we already have that covered, that integration point. We're not having to rework it. And that's a huge time constraint on a lot of organizations right now that have those interfaces to legacy systems. I'd say this is probably the biggest one we'll see, and this is where I get back to social. Social, not for social's sake, but the real value of social is equal to participation. So what I mean by that is what we're seeing within the way people are designing interfaces, and what we've done for Starbucks and for many of our clients is design an interface that anyone can pick up and know how to work with. I don't need training. So name an application that we're all familiar with that we can pick up and no one needs training.
Like grandma using Facebook.
There you go. Right. You're right, we're used to it. I mean, it's just a natural thing. Everybody knows how to use Facebook. So we've tried to make our basic interfaces somewhat similar to how Facebook's going to look. Emulate some of that capability. Have some news feeds that maybe I subscribe to that are relevant to me, right? That might make me aware of various types of things. But more importantly, make me to be a casual user, and if I'm interested in something, allow me to maybe do other aspects to this, maybe drill down in and make something actionable, be able to access information, but make it as simple as possible, as few buttons as possible. So the other big trend that we're seeing within applications is, and Microsoft's done a great job of confusing us for years, I got tons of menus, and every time I get a new version, I'm inundated with these things. I don't know how to use it. We're getting more and more used to using our mobile apps. But there's no directions that ever come with that. There's no directions that come with an iPad or, you know how to use them. It's intuitive. So that's the huge trend that we're seeing. But by making it that way, we get people to participate in the process. They start to dig it. They're like, look what I can do. I'm fully involved with this, and I don't mind it now because it's really easy for me to use. And therefore, I'm adding more value because I'm using it. Traditional applications, how often do we want to really go into SAP? I mean, I love it. They've done a great job with what they've done out there. Not fun to use. And most of our traditional ones are designed to be overly complex. So it doesn't work in that world. And in order to get people to take what they have in here, AIIM, that we've been trying to do for years and years and years, take what we have in here and get it out there somewhere where we can reference it, you've got to get people to participate. And the only way to do that is to make it easy for them, fun for them to use. And that's another huge trend that we're seeing and has been advantageous to the customers that we're seeing out there. And so I have various roles here. Hopefully I don't have pizzas. But you've got your executive role. Executives just want to be able, I want to know what's going on in my organization. And I want to see a couple of reports, I want to go drill down, I want to go. I don't need to, I'm not participating in it. I want to know what's going on. You've got your casual users. It might be somebody at Starbucks that says, "God, I was here, I wonder what happened." Oh, we're getting a new awning, you know. Or I get to go order some stuff specifically for our store through our contracts, you know, that type of thing. But I get transparency too. I know exactly what's going on as an organization. I know how I compare to my peers. I can compete against my peers. It's the other huge thing we saw at Starbucks. These guys are starting to compete. You know, I don't know what exactly, there's different things they compete for internally they don't always share, but they've got that ability now to kind of perform better and measure against those types of things. And then you've got your dedicated users, which has always been the focus on traditional workflow. It's how can we get people to do more keystrokes, less keystrokes, faster through, all that stuff. That's still great. It's still great. All going on. But now we have a little bit more transparency into what they're dealing with. And maybe taking some of the burden off of what they're dealing with by pushing it further out towards the point of origination. And then you've got your mobile aspect to all of this. So every one of these users could be using it through their browser, their desktop, whatever they might be doing, but also giving them the option at any time to get that same experience through mobile. So this is a key concept that we're seeing also in modern applications, and that's first awareness. So how do we get made aware of anything today with information?
Google it.
Google it. Well, that would be the knowledge part.
Usually my phone beeps.
Yeah, exactly. You get maybe a little bell ringing or something, or you got an email, a buzz, or something like that. And you might get a report that makes you aware of, whoa, what the hell's going on there. You might even subscribe to news feeds or something like that, or a database could be updated. It could be literally something we sold a big deal there and there's some information out. Now I'm aware of things. So making applications get you immediately aware of things. Without having to go and look for them and try to purge that information out of it is a big dynamic that our customers are experiencing. And that's one of the things that, you know, obviously with Starbucks, making them aware of things so they can adjust things on the fly. And it literally can be, and that might have, who knows what happened today exactly with logistics, but I'm driving around, something might have come up and I need to be over here now, what's the closest place or what's the best way to get there? You know, those types of geo things are making me aware. And then, when I'm aware of things, the next step is obviously, okay, there's something I'm aware of this, I get a text or an email or some type of notification. Now I need to maybe Google something, right? And it might not be on Google, it might be in one of our business systems. So that swivel chair dynamic that we've seen for so many years in traditional applications, great, I need to go and find out some information on this particular claim, you know, this particular problem. So now I go over to umpteen applications to find that information. And I'm probably writing things on little, you know, Post-its and wherever it might be, getting myself smart. I might be calling somebody going, hey, you know anything about this? And send an email out to somebody that may or may not respond, and who knows how much time. That's a challenge, but I'm trying to collect that knowledge. So our objectives in our applications are presenting that knowledge from those disparate systems, those silos, in a single interface, making it be smart about it. So it's serving them up from those different places, and if I need to modify it, being able to send the information back and update it and those types of things, and then allowing that real-time collaboration. That's another big concept here is that most of traditional workflow or even business process management has been built on serial processes. We know those things. I know exactly how my accounts payable works. And 1% is an exception, who cares? But the problem is most organizations, you know, 90% of your knowledge workers' business, they're dealing with cerebral things that you can't, they're not linear. They're not serial. They are these, you know, unknown business processes where we know where it starts and we know what resolution is. And resolution can be a lot better if we do it sooner and we have better information, but we don't know how it always gets there. And that's what we call dynamic case management, and being able to modify things in flight or change the way a process is going to work, invite more participants and get their knowledge so they can participate in something that we're aware of. That's the other big trend that we're definitely seeing. And then finally, the end of the day, all we want to do is action, right? We want this thing checked off our list. We want a customer happy or surprised. Or maybe we need to go back and get more awareness. To the customer himself saying, hey, guess what, we resolved your problem. Here's your link to whatever you need. So this is the big circle that we're seeing. And so we have our traditional structured processes, which I talked about, the linear ones, traditional ones that you're seeing out there, still relevant, still going to play in this mobile world. But more importantly, the focus is on dynamic, which is the other 80%, the white space that organizations are dealing with. I can't tell you how many large companies I go into today, and they're like, we've invested, we bet the farm on SAP. It's going to solve everything. And SAP is a great, application. Yeah, but there's all these promises made or wherever that we're going to solve all these other things that are ancillary, where they had all these systems that are very unique to what they do. It doesn't solve it. So there's this huge white space area.
The system or a tool by itself doesn't solve a business process beyond what the business process is supposed to do.
Right? Right. Yeah. So there's a lot of opportunities in that regard. Any additional comments or feedback on that?
Well, one thought, just with global businesses, it seems like all of this becomes even more important because they're deploying solutions to people in Malaysia, Costa Rica, other parts of the world. It's not Facebook easy. It's a struggle to get adoption.
You're absolutely right. Right. And there's a lot of concepts that you bring into play there. It's the adoption thing. It's not Facebook easy, or you get into different types of semantics where something can mean something to one person and not to another. So you can't always build that into a system, right? You have to allow that to be adjusted on the fly based on that particular region. Yep. All right, number 5. Everyone should like this one. We think it all should be free. Seriously.
Is Appian free?
What?
Is Appian free?
Yeah, you know what? It pays for itself, but believe me. But what I mean by free, and it definitely more than pays for itself. We've got the case studies there. And I don't need no more sales pitches. You shouldn't have said, hey, I want to go to my enterprise vendor and go, guess what? We want mobile. And they go, great. I'll get you the quote next week. And we'll develop a whole mobile development environment, and you don't want to deal with that. That's not realistic. That should be free. And say, well, guess what? I want, same deal. I want to go to the cloud. Or I want the option to go to the cloud. Okay, it should be part of my existing contract. I should be able to swap those back and forth. Same thing with different types of participants. You shouldn't say, well, we're going to have a power user, and this guy's going to be a light user. We don't know. You can never figure that out. And if you really get people to participate in these things like you want to, like we're selling you, then that shouldn't matter. So it should all be free. And then finally, these awareness, capabilities, the knowledge, and the ability to do action on those from anywhere in a process or even looking at a customer record should be free. So this one we took a little bit of our own tack on as Appian, but I think that you'll see that the industry demands this, and the industry demands this. So that's what I have for today. Hope it was somewhat useful for you. The other thing I would like to mention, maybe we can continue the discussion, whatever, offline. I could show you some of the stuff we have for Starbucks or any of our applications. We could even do it offline at some point. I've got a couple of handouts over there on some of the stuff that we're doing with some of our clients. I've even got, we were joking around about this mobile thing that you put on the back of your phone. I call it all your eggs in one basket. It sticks on there, and then you put your ID, your credit card, and you lose your phone, you lose everything. But they are neat, kids like them. So, all right, well, thank you, everybody.